what I call institutionalized in the public school system. So he was my challenge, and I'm glad he was the first one because it made the other two a lot easier. They were kind of a different personality, more compliant, people pleaser personalities, and more spiritual than my oldest one. But I'm so proud of my oldest one being, now he's the CFO of a company, and I knew I had to channel that strong will. God told me back then, just channel it, just be strong, that this one's gonna be, he's gonna be successful, but you just have to be strong as a mother, And so yeah, he's got multiple businesses. He now employs my husband. So that's kind of interesting how that turned out, but it's great because they have a great relationship and they get to go to lunch together, and they, they're kind of similar personalities, and they're in the car industry, and so it's just very rewarding to see, see your children flourish after, you go through all the years of homeschooling. But my second son is he's studying to be a medic. He's an EMT right now, an EMT fireman for San Diego County, and he's my camper. He's like the one that likes to, he likes country music. I mean, the other one, my oldest, he services a Lamborghini company, and so they have high-end clientele, and he's my bougie son. So they like the bougie stuff. And then my middle boy is like the camper, and your kids are all gonna have different personalities, just to FYI. Then my youngest is third year at Dallas Baptist University. So I'm not saying all this to brag about my kids and I'm saying God gets the glory, okay, first and foremost, because he was my inspiration for doing this. And he was my strength, and he was, when times got a little, frustrating or discouraging, I just relied on the Lord, and he gave us joy and laughter. He did, so I'm not going to paint a picture like homeschooling's easy, because it wasn't always easy, but it's so rewarding. And the quality of education your kids are going to get is so superior to what they're going to get in a public school system. Now, I just heard what the gal was saying about Seashore. That sounds like an awesome option as well. There's so many choices that parents are not aware of. So, for us, we would, like, when you do something, and then, you can customize your child's education. That's the beauty of this. So, like, for example, my youngest, he was kind of my overachiever. He had two big brothers that he was always competing with, and I started him homeschooling from 3 years old to 12th grade until he graduated. We attended a church. They have a private school. And under the umbrella, they also have what they call ISP, which is Independent Study Program. And excuse me, my throat's dry. And so we were under that umbrella. So we turned record. Thank you, Michelle. This is sweet. Thank you. I was actually just here.
But it is totally acceptable to file any other time during the school year. The PSA filing portal on the CD's website is closed between June and September. Compulsory education in California only begins for children who turn 6 years old prior to September 1st of that school year. This is essential to note because it means you will not file a private school affidavit for a kindergartner. Many people are confused about this because all of our local schools, both public and private, enroll kindergartners and TKers. And our culture celebrates the time that a child starts kindergarten as their big symbolic moment of starting their education. But as a parent, you probably already know that the process of education begins for our children at birth, at home with us. We are our children's first and main teachers. This is a fact that our state legislators and current education system want us to forget. They spend a lot of energy trying to convince us that children can only learn through California credentialed teachers. So we will turn our children over to them as soon as they are 4 or 5 years old so they can institutionalize them, not educate them. Students cannot be enrolled full-time at more than one school. Lots of people have asked me if they can file a PSA for their children and also be enrolled in like a public charter school to have access to state funds for homeschooling. Both of those methods of homeschooling constitute full-time enrollment in a lawful school, and since your child cannot be enrolled in more than one school, you cannot file a PSA and also be in a charter school. This law does not exclude you from enrolling your children in enrichment classes at local community centers, homeschool learning centers, or at your local church, who may offer homeschool classes. This law also does not exclude dual enrollment in community college for homeschool students. That is a separate topic altogether and one that varies by each college, so get in touch with your college. My middle schooler and high schooler are both doing college classes right now as homeschoolers, and they're totally free, so that's a great option. and toy. PSA filing families are exempt from state immunization requirements. In a few minutes, I will talk more about the record keeping for your PSA, even if you aren't vaccinating your children. Annual or state testing is not a requirement for private homeschool families. You can choose any name you want for your private school. The name you choose does not have to be unique. Many existing private schools already have names that are similar or the same. If your children outgrow the name you had originally chosen, you can change the name the next time you file the private school affidavit. This often happens between grade school and middle school, or middle school and high school, where they suddenly don't like that you're called, Willow Tree Homeschool. They want to sound like they're graduating from something that sounds more like a school. Okay, homeschooling does not have to break the bank. It is totally possible to homeschool for free. I have created a huge list of free resources on Homeschool Concierge's website. I have a QR code here that you can scan for access to a document that has links to everything that I'm talking about and gives you plenty of resources. I am often asked if I file the PSA, is our personal data then listed on the CDE's private school database? According to the CDE, the data from the private school affidavit is used to create a directory of private schools, but the CDE does not publicly list any school with fewer than 6 students enrolled. If you have more than 6 students, you may want to form 2 private schools, one under your husband, one under a grandma, an aunt. You can do that. There are a few requirements for PSA record keeping. You always want to keep a copy of your completed PSA form, and they do email you a copy. Track student daily attendance. Most homeschool families keep a calendar for each student, and on top of that calendar, they write days absent are marked in red. And then there are no days marked in red because every student that is homeschooled is always present and always learning. You have to maintain immunization records for each student, but remember, homeschool students are not required to be immunized, so your records can be partial or completely blank. You must offer instruction in English, and you must offer courses commonly taught in California public schools. So you must offer language arts, math, science, social studies, and the electives of your choice. You want to keep a list of the courses your school offers with your school records. And this list can grow every school year. Have on file a list of the instructors with their addresses and qualifications. Parents filing a PSA are not required to hold a California teaching credential. California Education Code does not require any private school teachers to hold a teaching credential. So your qualifications are simply that you are capable of teaching. Have your children's cumulative file with the documents required for school entrance in California schools, which I will cover in a few minutes when I cover charter schools. These records can be requested by you as the admin of your new school after you withdraw your students from their past school, or you can create this file when you first enroll your kids in your school if they've never been in school before. The next legal option for homeschooling in California is the Private School Satellite Program, or a PSP. PSPs are organizations usually run by experienced homeschoolers that a family chooses to join and pays an annual enrollment fee to. The PSP leader files the private school affidavit on behalf of a group of students enrolled in their program. Parents who sign up for PSPs become a teacher of their own children in that school. Remember, your child can only be enrolled in one California school, so if you enroll in a PSP, you do not need to file the PSA yourself. Many families choose a PSP because they want help with record keeping. PSPs may also offer additional homeschooling supports with access to special classes and programs for their students. Check with each PSP to see what they offer. If you are interested in finding a PSP to enroll in, you can view a list on our website with my QR code. When considering a PSP, please make sure they have been around for many years and have experience with government offices, minor work permits, transcripts, and diplomas. During COVID, we saw the launch of a lot of new PSPs, and they might not have the experience necessary to deal with certain offices that may come knocking on your door. One of the public school options for homeschooling in California is a public independent study program, commonly referred to as an ISP. ISPs are offered by many local school districts and some county offices of ed. These are public school programs that will match families with California credentialed teachers and provide students with access to curriculum. Since they are public school programs, there are no fees charged to families who are enrolling in these programs. These schools follow the curriculum and the educational plan of the school district, so you may not want to be part of one of these. Student progress is assessed throughout the school year with assignment tracking, work records, curriculum quizzes and tests, benchmark testing, and state standardized testing. Parents and students are required to have frequent meetings, either online, in person, or via the telephone with their assigned credential teacher. Those meetings have to occur at least once every 20 school days, if not more often, if you need more support. Families can learn more about their local ISPs by contacting their local school district, neighboring school districts, or their county office of education. Check with each school to verify what grade levels they offer and their specific program requirements, because each one looks different. Enrollment in an ISP outside of your home district will require an inter-district transfer form from your home district. Oftentimes your home district will decline that transfer request, in which case you then can fight it at the school board or the county office of ed. There is a lot to know about different kinds of charter schools. In 1992, the state legislature passed the Charter Schools Act, AB 1448. Making California the second state in the nation after Minnesota to allow public charters. I think it's interesting to note that public charter schools were made possible in our country by the left, the same left that is now attacking them and trying to get them to go away. So since that time, there has been a steady increase of high-performing, innovative charter schools in our state, giving parents more choices in the public education sector than they ever had before. California public charter schools are nonprofit public schools that receive state education funds. Unlike traditional public schools that are run by school districts with an elected school board and a board-appointed superintendent, most charter schools are run by private nonprofit organizations with their own self-appointed boards. They have greater flexibility in designing their educational program, and many California charter schools have developed independent study, personalized learning programs to serve homeschool families. These programs allow you to opt out of certain curriculums and certain topics that you don't want to teach your children. So they offer the most flexibility of a public school homeschool option. Brick and mortar charter schools are schools located in actual buildings that operate similar to the way a traditional district neighborhood school operates. Students meet on campus Monday through Friday and are taught the course of study by a credentialed teacher. These types of charter schools are bound to the school entrance immunization requirements of our state. All schools, both public and private, that offer in-person instruction are required to impose immunization requirements. The difference between a regular public school and a charter school is usually in the approach and instruction and learning. While all charter schools in California are bound to these same standards, the regular public schools are, the methods that they use to teach and employ these can vary greatly. So you'll need to check with each school if you want to consider that program. Some charter schools are so impacted they have to employ wait lists and have lotteries to fill the very few spots that open up each year. Some families choose like a hybrid charter school model, like Ceci did, and these are independent study charter schools that operate a campus part-time, offering students 2 to 3 days of individualized instruction to go along with instruction supported at home by the parents the other days. These schools typically require students to be fully immunized because they are coming onto campus regularly. Then we have virtual and online charter schools that have become popular in the recent decade as internet access has become more affordable. Students are required to log in each day to engage in instruction and complete assignments. The school provides credit world. Any of these non-classroom based are good for that. Most homeschoolers who choose to enroll in charter schools typically choose the personalized learning model or homeschool charter school. In this model, the parent serves as the main educator of their child, working closely with their assigned credential teacher to choose curriculum, educational activities, and enrichment opportunities. It is important to note when looking for one of these charter schools that they are legally allowed to serve students who live in the county of the district that they are authorized in or any adjacent county. This flexibility broadens your choices in schools. Homeschool Concierge has a list of non-classroom based and hybrid charter schools on our website, and I included a link to this list that you can access through scanning the QR code. I'm always happy to assist families in finding the right education program for them, and I do offer school choice consulting. Tips and facts for homeschool charter schools. The teacher you are assigned to is what is going to make or break your experience at that school. So it is really important that you ask questions of that school and you try to get matched to a teacher who is going to understand you, what you're trying to do, and your children. I actually have a list of questions that I've compiled also that you can get through this code. Independent studies charter schools are still bound to the same legal education requirements that all public schools are: progress tracking, state testing, and school benchmark. However, these approaches vary from school to school, so it's really important to ask all these questions. Instructional funds are a wonderful perk, bless you, of enrolling in an independent study charter school. Not all schools offer instructional funds, and the amount varies from school to school, and the amount of funding can change from school year to school year. With this model, families work with their assigned teacher to help direct instructional funds through the school's approved vendor list to create custom education experiences for their students. There are thousands of vendors who serve the California homeschool community, and they work both with charter school students and students who homeschool privately. If you are homeschooling privately, be sure to ask if you find a vendor, be sure to ask them if they offer a discount for private pay families, because they often do, because the charter schools, when they are paying for a student to go to the classes at that vendor, the payment to the vendor is delayed 30 to 60 days. So they love private paying families because then it's money up front. So now I'll quickly go over the documents that you should include in your student's cumulative record. Remember, this record is created by the first school your child is in, public or private, and it follows them from school to school after that. So if you're not homeschooling for the very first time that your child is going to school, you don't have to create this. You'll order this from their past school. It's important to note that you order it as the admin of your new school, because they will not release this record to the parents. So for TK, kindergarten, and first grade students who are entering a school for the first time, they must have a health exam, or there's a waiver on it, an oral exam or a waiver, and then the immunization record. So charter schools that are non-classroom based and private homeschooling families can have blank immunization records or partially completed immunization records. There needs to be proof of the child's legal name, place of birth, birth date, sex of the pupil, and documents that would suffice would be a birth certificate, adoption record, passport, baptismal record, any form of U.S. or foreign government issued identification, or even a signed letter from a parent or a pediatrician. And you just need a copy of that. You don't have to have the original. Yeah?
So I have a question for you. So if my kids go to preschool now, right? And then
Yes.
I needed to give them all of that stuff anyways. Even though they're in preschool and it's not considered, you know, K through elementary school. But my plan is to just not even have them go into public school at all, and either homeschool or whatever, hybrid.
Right.
Do I need to ask them for a copy since they already have everything and keep that as my copy, or do I not even need to worry about it because they're in preschool and
So the preschool requirements are very different than once you enter school. So these requirements aren't until you're coming into like kindergarten or above. And TK, well, it seems like it's something different to all of us that we have TK or preppy K and then kindergarten. It's actually just your child's repeating kindergarten under a different name of a program. So, and it's my younger children did TK because I was already homeschooling my older one through a charter school, and I figured why not get access to the funds, because I'm dragging these two little ones with me to all the field trips and all the classes, so why not do the ones they want to do? So they did do TK, but I would never suggest putting a child that's your first child, that you're not already dragging around everywhere else with an older child, into one of these programs, because you have to jump through hoops that are unnecessary at that age, and they learn so much just from playing that it's unnecessary. But I loved preschool. My kids did preschool, and it's a different, so if you pull them out of preschool, I would ask for all the records that they have when you pull them out. I don't believe there's any requirements that they can't release it to mom, but then you would create a cumulative record for your children when you start them in first grade.
okay.
Yeah.
First grade, not kindergarten.
Not kindergarten. If you're homeschooling privately, you never file the private school affidavit for kindergarten, because it's not, your child isn't old enough to be required to be in school in California. Now that may change. Our legislature loves to change things, but they did try and change it last legislative session, and we were able to stop it. So follow legislation, take action, and I will let you know. But as of now, don't file the PSA for any child that has not reached 6 years old prior to September 1st.
Okay, so if my kid falls behind that because he
Right.
was born in November, so you know he has to be held back once. Well, I don't call
Right.
it held back.
No, it's not. Yeah.
I call him smarter. Let's just
Right.
put it that way.
Right.
So technically, he's supposed to be in kindergarten kindergarten, or but he's doing TK, but
Right.
he's like, whatever.
Well, I made the mistake because I didn't know all of this with my first child, and he was a boy with an August birthday, and I started him the year early, and he was not emotionally ready. And so then it's a huge pain when you're part of the public school system to try and get them to hold your child back. Luckily, I was part of a very wonderful non-classroom based charter school, and they worked with me to get all the records they needed to hold him back. And so he's in his senior year now, but he's already 18. And so, but why are they in a hurry? And I'm kind of thankful, because if he had graduated last year, he wouldn't have got to graduate. It would have been during COVID. So then the school will require proof of residency. This is to prove that you live within the boundaries that they are allowed to serve. So this would be a utility bill, a property tax bill, correspondence from a government agency, a rental property, contract, lease, or an affidavit from a property owner. Like say you're having financial trouble and you're living with someone else that you don't own the home and none of the bills come in your name, you can have a letter saying that you live there. For families filing the PSA, they need to include a document that states the name and the address of the student's parents. So this would look like your enrollment form. The date the child entered the school, and if they leave the school, the date the child exited the school. A list of courses taken each year that your child is in the school, and any grades or credits that were awarded to the child. It's also really important to note that grades are not required in California. Our schools have decided that they want to grade our children. So that's not a requirement if you homeschool. And in fact, I set up a number of non-classroom based charter schools, and while I was there, we did not do grades unless the parents specifically wanted grades. For high school students, include a current high school transcript, and if applicable when they're done, California High School Proficiency Exam, GED, or diploma. The final and most uncommon option for homeschooling is the credentialed teacher or tutor option. Parents may choose to hire a credentialed teacher who is qualified by law to teach their children the grades, to teach their children while in that specific grade that they hold the credential for. Alternatively, parents who hold a credential may teach their children at home as well. The child must be taught for at least 3 hours a day between 8 a.m. and 4 p.m. for 175 days in the school year. And the several branches of study required to be taught in our schools, and the instruction must be in English. Most homeschool support organizations do not suggest this homeschool path, and instead advise families to go ahead and file the PSA because this doesn't have any requirements written in the law for what you would need to prove that your child did the work. So if you really, and I think we might see this more now with COVID in our legislature and our school, the demands in our schools. And so what we would suggest is that you keep 2 to 3 samples per required subject per school year. So if you're ever questioned, you can pull out samples and say, this is the work that my children have done. So even a district school, they only hold 1 sample for each subject for your child. So that's all that they have as proof that your children did anything in their school as well. Okay, so that's all I have on my notes, so I'm happy to answer questions.
Find groups that
Yes.
you can hang out with.
Okay, so on my little QR code here that I made for you guys, I have created on my website a huge list of all the social media platforms and all the groups that the homeschoolers hang out in. So it's really important, even if you're not, a lot of them are on Facebook. We seem to live on Facebook, and I know a lot of people have gotten off Facebook, but maybe consider making a fake account with another Gmail address or something and get back on Facebook and connect with some groups, because there's tons of them out there.
Okay.
And so once you find the group that I think I'm probably in 2,000 Facebook groups. And so then you see field trips that are going on that you can join, you see park days that are going on, you see vendor advertisements for classes that they're offering in your area, you see if people are trying to set up a co-op, or now the common term is pod, that didn't exist before COVID, we've always been co-oping, but I'll let them keep the word pod because I'm afraid that they're gonna come after our pods and our co-ops, and then we won't be able to educate our children at home, so we'll use the word co-op under the radar. So that's where you find all of that kind of stuff. I also have a program. So prior to COVID, Homeschool Concierge, we had an ambassador program where parents that wanted to lead field trips or teach classes could do it with our support. So we would front the money, make the reservations and do everything like that, and then you would be able to enjoy the field trip with your family by checking people in, and it often the chaperone gets a free ticket, so it would help subsidize your field trip. So we're just launching that back up and have just done our first 3 field trips. So if anyone's interested in that, just let me know. It's fun. Field trips are really fun. We used to, before COVID, we would do 3 a week. So the other thing I want to inspire you guys is that most of the wonderful things we have in our homeschool community were started by homeschool parents who saw a need and they filled it. So most of the learning centers, most of the field trip groups, the co-ops, the PSPs, they were all started by homeschool parents who needed to create something for their own students. So feel inspired that you can do anything you want for your kids. You just need to find the people to do it with.